Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's story, we'll follow a young nurse named John, who takes an unexpected path to love when he helps a mysterious girl in need, going against the wishes of his wealthy father and ruthless clinic administrators. So here we go. Enjoy the story. John had been working as a nurse in a private clinic for 2 months. He didn't really socialize or try to make friends with anyone. Everyone who worked there considered themselves a step above those who worked in regular hospitals. If a new person came, they'd look down on them for a long time, treating them condescendingly and with disdain. But it didn't work that way with John. The staff, as usual, started looking down on him, trying to teach him, especially since a young man had come to work in what was essentially a woman's profession. But it soon became clear that John couldn't care less about their attitudes. In fact, he looked down on them very condescendingly. There was Zoe on John's shift. That's how she introduced herself. The girl didn't hide that she didn't love her profession and hadn't come here to save people, but to find that one wealthy patient she could leave her job for and never work again in her life. John soon learned about Zoe's dreams. He couldn't resist asking, "Zoe, but young and beautiful people hardly ever get sick. How are you going to find a worthy man?" "Age and looks aren't that important to me," she replied. "So you're hoping to marry for money?" "What's wrong with that? Thousands of girls do it," John smirked. "Zoe, have you seen those girls? They prepare themselves for being millionaires from childhood, know 2 languages, are constantly dieting. Everything about them is perfect." Zoe choked on her pastry, setting it aside. "Are you saying I'm fat?" "No, of course not. But to interest a pampered rich man, charisma isn't enough." John looked Zoe up and down. Not even that much charisma. From that moment on, the girl became enemy number 1 for John, though that's exactly what he wanted. He couldn't stand overly curious people. Zoe even managed to poke her nose into his plate when he was eating. Now she kept a respectful distance, and John could breathe freely. One time he was sitting in the nurses' station while 2 young nurses were whispering about something. It turned out they were talking about how the chief doctor had fired a nurse yesterday for being 10 minutes late to work. "Can you believe it, John? He didn't even let her explain. He just said, 'You're fired,' and her mother is sick at home." "Strange. The chief seemed like a normal person to me." The girls waved their hands dismissively. "He's gone crazy. You just don't know him. Anyway, the rest isn't interesting." John left, and the girls continued talking about him. "He's kind of strange, isn't he? Good looking, but it doesn't seem like he has a girlfriend. And he hasn't hooked up with anyone here. Yeah, he keeps to himself. Did you see his watch? I saw an actor wearing one like that in a magazine. I mean, I get that it's just a knockoff for John, but why? Why does he have it? Sometimes I think he's looking for a partner like our Zoe." "No way. He doesn't seem like that type." "Then what's he doing here? A normal, healthy guy working as a nurse?" Honestly, John probably couldn't even answer what he's doing here himself. John was proving to everyone that he was worth something, that he could live without asking anyone for help, that he was a man who could back up his words. Just 6 months ago, he couldn't have imagined ending up like this. But there was no going back. His shift was almost over. He loved the night shifts. He could ponder, read, or just stare into the darkness. Tonight there had been such a strong blizzard that it was cold just looking out the window. He was about to start getting ready to leave. In winter it gets light so late that he'd make it back to his rented apartment before it was properly daylight. That's when he saw a girl making her way along the path, which had been thoroughly covered in snow overnight. She was heading towards the hospital. He managed to make out that she was likely just a bum, and at that moment, she fell. John stood up. "Come on. Get up." But the girl didn't even move. John rushed outside, scooped her up from the snowdrift, and hurried back into the hospital. He nearly ran over a doctor at the ER entrance. "What's going on here?" John knew full well he wouldn't be patted on the head for this. Bringing a near-homeless person into a hospital where only the elite came. He didn't bother answering, just carried his bundle into the ER. He quickly examined the stranger. Clear signs of hypothermia, and bruises all over her body. But nothing too serious, it seemed. She was just coming to, and looking at him fearfully. Who are you? Don't worry, you're in the hospital. No, I can't be, I have to leave. But her weakened legs wouldn't support her. At that moment, the chief doctor burst into the ER, waving John's employment records in the air. Out! Get out of my hospital immediately. The last thing I need is for all the dregs of society to be brought in here. I'm giving you such a bad review. No clinic will hire you now, not even the worst public hospital. John snatched his papers back. He wanted to say something, but caught Zoe's gaze. She looked ecstatic. Happiness was radiating from her. John shifted his gaze to his other colleagues. None of them looked upset. And of course, none were going to jump to his defense. On their faces, he could read, "Serves you right, idiot. Good thing it's not me." But what can I say? People? What did you take that oath for? John waved his hand dismissively, scooped up the girl whose muscles were thawing, causing her teeth to chatter violently, and went to hail a cab. He realized he simply couldn't get her back to his apartment. And though he needed to save money, especially since he probably wouldn't get paid by this clinic, John kept trying to flag down a ride. A couple cars stopped, but immediately drove off after seeing his companion. Finally, some old guy in a Chevy stopped. He drove in silence, but just before dropping them off, he said, "You should stop letting your lady drink so much, huh? Look at her, doesn't even look human." Only then did John realize why no one would pick them up. The girl looked so haggard that she swayed even just standing still. At home, he made her take a hot bath. He could see she was barely alive, but he had to get her cleaned up and fed. John was afraid she'd fall asleep right at the table, but she didn't. As the stranger warmed up and ate, she seemed to become more lively, even a bit nervous. "My name's John, and I'm Kate. Tell me, where did all those bruises come from?" "My stepfather. You see, my mom died a year ago, and he decided to marry me off to his son. The son even divorced his wife for it." "Oh, not bad. Big inheritance?" "More like debts. You see, if I inherit my mom's farm, there will have to be an audit since he's been the only one running the company for 2 years. But if his son marries me, then something happens to me, and that's it. I can't go anywhere. They'll catch me, but I can't drag you into this either. I've been running from them for a month." "Well, you're worrying for nothing, don't you think?" "What are you saying? They have money, even the people working for them, and you're just a regular nurse, sorry. Now that they're after me too, you won't be able to do anything." John wanted to explain, but his guest simply collapsed off the chair. He nearly killed himself seeing it, but he realized she was acting strange. He carried her to the couch and took her temperature, 104F. To be expected, really. John gave her a shot and reached for the phone. "I just need to make one call and admit defeat." He looked at Kate, so pure, young, beautiful. "Hey, Dad, I need your help." His father arrived half an hour later. As soon as he walked in, he started nagging. "Well, son, can't do anything without Daddy's help, can you? Just like I said, you spoiled rich kids are useless." John had left home after a fight with his father. His dad thought everything John wanted was stupid. He had only studied to be a doctor for 6 years abroad, so he could goof off without supervision. And he only wanted to open a clinic to look cool in front of girls. John didn't understand why his father treated him that way. And when his dad said, "Where would you be without my money?" John walked out and slammed the door. But then his father saw the girl. "John, who's this?" "Dad, please listen." He told his father everything he knew. "Understand, Dad, in this situation, my willpower alone isn't enough to help her. I just had to turn to you for help. Please don't refuse. Why do you want to help her? What if she's lying to you?" "Maybe, but you'll be able to find out." John was silent for a bit. His father was a very perceptive man. "Dad, I like her, and I wouldn't want anything bad to happen to her. You'll make her marry you out of gratitude?" John stared at him for a moment, then laughed. "No way. Living with someone who sees you as a cross to bear their whole life?" An hour later, his father got a phone call. He listened, then hung up. "Well, son, there's a slight problem." "What is it?" "She turns 18 in a week. If they find her here before then, you could be in serious trouble." He thought for a moment. "Please don't give me back to them. I'll do anything. I can clean floors, cook." John's father looked at the girl in surprise. She had clearly been awake for a while. "We have people to clean floors around here." "Oh, what am I going to do with you two?" Up to the house. John had a suitcase, a couple large bundles, a few boxes. It looked like he was moving out. A neighbor peeked out. "Where are you going, John? Who's going to take my blood pressure for me?" "Moving. To another city, another hospital." The old lady sighed and closed her door. The week flew by in a single day. John was amazed. For her age, Kate was very educated. It turned out she had been kept inside for the last year, and so had spent her time reading, consuming anything in the home library. "Kate, you could easily start in the final year of college." She blushed. "You think so?" His dad shared updates. Kate was being searched for seriously. How did he know? If it all came to light, her stepfather would face charges on multiple counts. "So what do I do?" She shook her head, looking at John. "Kate, when were you supposed to inherit?" She sighed. "Either when I turn 21 or when I get married." Silence filled the room. Suddenly John smiled. "I know I'm a bit older. No, I trust you completely, more than anyone else. As soon as this is all settled, we'll get divorced so you can live in peace." Kate's relatives confronted them as they left the courthouse after the wedding. Her stepfather grabbed John by the collar, yelling, "You have no right, she's underage." But John's father stepped between them, and security immediately intervened. Glaring, John's dad said, "Get out of my way before I crush you like a bug." The only person from Kate's side at the wedding was her very elderly godfather. When he heard the story of how they met, he just shook his head for a long time. Then he hugged Kate, asking why she hadn't told him anything. He left without even saying goodbye. Kate said her godfather used to be some big scientific figure. John understood the man's face looked familiar, but decided not to dwell on it. The next day, the godfather woke them up. John and Kate had to hurriedly push their beds together. "What are you two laying around for? Let's go, John. Time to take over the clinic." "Take over what clinic?" "I looked into your background and think you'll make a worthy director. Anyway, this is my wedding gift to you two. I'm too old for all this, and frankly, people are like animals." An hour later, they stood in front of the clinic doors. John and Kate exchanged glances. What a surprise. The godfather went ahead, with them following behind. The first person they met was Zoe. She looked at the elderly man fearfully and took off running down the hallway. A minute later, the chief doctor came scurrying over with his entourage. "Dr. Archibald, you should have warned us." "Why? Start packing your things, you're fired. As for the rest of you, allow me to introduce the person who will now be not only the chief doctor, but the owner of this clinic." Whispers broke out in the crowd. "John, the bum," he heard. "This bum the chief doctor threw out on the street, the woman he fired an innocent man over. She's my goddaughter." After those words, the chief doctor, still hoping for a mistake, glumly went to his office. Some people came up to congratulate John. Others left in silence. A year passed. Everyone in town knew John Alexis, so when he entered the maternity ward, the nurses practically lined up. But he looked at them in such a way that the line dispersed, with one nurse offering him a glass of water. "How's it going?" "All good, just wait." Kate had been dragging her feet about divorcing him. She never would. Even after they brought charges against her stepfather and would-be brother-in-law, she refused. No, he didn't want a divorce either. The more he got to know this girl, the more he dreamed of her staying by his side. But he had promised her. Eventually she said, "You're not getting rid of me that easily," and simply wrapped her arms around his neck, followed by a passionate kiss. That day he vowed to her that she would never be rid of him again. Now Kate was behind those doors, and soon he would see their son. If you enjoyed this story, please support me by clicking the like button. It's just a simple action for you, but it means a lot to me. All the best.